Hello and welcome to the 14 Going on 41 podcast. I'm Arvind and joining me is my delightful co-host, the Gen Z speaking, ocean loving, bad at math and trash talking, now podcasting, Kiara Arana.
Hi, I'm a co-host of 14 Going on 41 like Arvind said, but I'm the 14-year-old co-host. And each episode we talk to people who have gone down the road less traveled. But today, for the first time ever, I am not the only teenager speaking. Our guest is actually 16 years old, so she's quite early on the road, still heading down the path.
That's true. And that also means that for the first time, the combined age and combined, Kiara, is when we add things, you don't go to school. So when you add your age and our guest's age, it's still less than mine. So I don't know how to feel about that. But I am genuinely excited to speak to Avyana because her story is pretty unique. And it just goes to show you, in theme with a lot of things we talk about here on this podcast, you can do something special and different at any age.
I recently heard her speak at the Jaipur Literature Festival, which is the greatest literary festival on earth.
Hold on. How many literary festivals have you been to?
Like 2.
Okay. So just to back it up a little bit, maybe go to a few more before you can call it the greatest one on earth. That's laughable, but it is pretty good.
It's known as the greatest literary festival in the world. So I'm pretty sure it's known for that for a reason. But the fact that she was speaking there at 16 is amazing. She is a climate advocate and a writer. And I was just blown away with how she experiments with solutions and actually tries to do something. What really stuck with me is that, yes, she's a climate advocate, but she doesn't frame climate change as something that's happening in the far future or as a buzzword. She talks about it as it's a design problem, a systems problem, something that can be worked on, that should be worked on piece by piece, which is a very powerful shift. It's from panic to possibility.
It sounds like we need a lot more of that, especially when you consider the scale of the issue. It's easy to get overwhelmed by something as big as climate change and how do you fix it, and you need collective action of countries to come together. But I think phrasing it the way you did in terms of as a design problem and starting to approach it in a way that makes it a bit more bite-sized just makes it more achievable, and I think is going to be very interesting to hear about. So I guess we'll hear about climate action, but we'll also hear a little bit about, I guess, a mindset of how to attack these really big problems. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, and I'm very interested in seeing how she finds a balance between so many things. So I was writing a bit earlier last year now in 2026 about some of the issues I found in the world and just my perspectives as a 14-year-old. And I remember feeling really depressed about it. And my parents were like, no, you cannot just be you need to be happy you're still 14. I'm very interested to see how she balances that out. And so in light of all those depressing things, we still have a few games that we play on the podcast, a few segments, one of which we'll be doing now, which is our Gen Z Word of the Day. Okay, so bear with me today, but the word I have picked is quite cringy. It is farming.
Farming? Like tractors, mud, animals, cattle. Old MacDonald had a farming? Farming?
No, you Gen Z, mud, really? You need to connect the dots here.
That's Gen Z, mud, nature, physical activity. Yeah, this doesn't go. I get it. Farming. Well, I actually have heard of this phrase. I was at a wedding recently with some friends, all of whom were interested in learning Gen Z words. And one of the things we talked about was aura farming. And so I'm assuming farming is aura farming, which we debated, had a couple of contexts, but one of it is, you're trying a bit too hard to be cool and you're peacocking. And so farming is kind of like aura farming and you're trying too hard to get good aura.
So I'm not sure if I'm entirely correct, but the explanation I've heard is actually the complete opposite of that. And I have heard farming being used in that context, but to me, that's fake aura farming. So actual farming is when you're doing something or when someone's doing something so cool without even trying, and that's giving them clout with other people. Because like they're not
Mm.
even trying and they're just looking so cool. So
There's fake aura farming, and then there's aura farming IRL.
yeah, I mean that's the way I've understood it.
Okay. I have to take up
Yeah.
this conversation with a few friends of mine, just to make sure I've got the right explanation. But okay, close enough. So farming, aura farming is doing something. Now, whether you're doing it in a good sense or in a cringe sense, I'm not sure. But farming seems to connect a little bit to having to do some farming sustainably, which could connect to what we'll talk about today with sustainability and climate action.
And I don't mean to go into the stereotype of the trash talking or anything, but it seems like the what I have called the fake aura farming, when you're doing something to seem cool specifically and you're trying too hard, is what some millennials and Gen Xers sound like when they're trying to use some of the brain rot. And so they're trying so hard to like be cool. That's like fake aura farming.
Some millennials and some Gen Xers. Fair enough. It's not the first time I've been accused of trying too hard. So we shall move on and bring on our guest after this, right?
Yes, we will be back with Avyana Mehta.
Woohoo!
We are back and we are joined by Avyana Mehta, climate advocate, writer, speaker, podcaster, and change maker. From creating initiatives that rethink plastic waste and promote sustainable solutions, to speaking at major platforms and inspiring peers around the world, to writing her own book, Avyana at 16 years old is already building a life shaped by curiosity, action, and innovation. It is a pleasure to have you on the podcast, Avyana. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me here. I cannot wait to get started. And it's amazing what you're doing at this young age as well. And of course, Arvind as well. So,
I thought you were talking to me, but but Avyana, I heard that you were the youngest ever speaker at the Jaipur Lit Fest. That is true, correct?
Yes. At JLF 2026, yes.
There you go. And you are also now the youngest ever guest we've had on 14 going on 41. I don't know which you consider to be the bigger honor, but it's really great to have you here. And this podcast is all about those fork in the road moments. And it's usually different when we have someone who's 40 and has gone through career journeys, figured out transitions, etc. I'm actually curious to start with you, where you're this kid going to school and you're going through projects. Kids are probably trying to figure out how do I get good grades, how do I do well in exams, what do I take as electives, what do I study further. And somewhere in here you're like, let me actually do a sustainability based startup called Plastic to Build. Like, how did that enter your mind and how did you go there?
So honestly, it is actually a very funny story. So I began way back in 5th grade. My school was actually hosting these sustainability sessions that we have on several topics, like, say, for example, waste management and deforestation. And one of those topics included something called eco bricks. So eco bricks were basically these plastic PET filled bottles. They're filled with soft plastics like chip wrappers, chocolate wrappers. So they're basically bricks, but which are environmentally friendly somehow.
And it is reused plastic essentially.
Yeah, just reuse plastic essentially. From then on, I wanted to know more about these eco bricks, but then back in 5th grade, I just never really approached the person who taught us about this. I was just like, let me do my own research. And that research actually stemmed from this school in Guatemala, which was called Education and the Environment. This school was made entirely out of eco bricks and did not use any fees, just that you had to bring your plastic waste and they use that for construction. Like entirely out of plastic waste. Can you imagine that?
Wow.
And I was just like very intrigued. To my 5th grader mind, a simple Google search from my mother's phone was just wow. So then I delved on, and then COVID hit. Then COVID hit, and while my online classes were going on, I used to start searching on sustainability topics, and then I realized that there's such a vast umbrella of things. There's so many topics, and all of them are interrelated. And
Mm.
I just, started delving so much into the sustainability aspect. Like it just, evoked this sort of sense of curiosity in me. I was just like, I want to learn I want to learn more about this. And, I have to do this. I want to do something in this, and I want to do something for this. And
And sorry, I'm going to
also,
pause you there and interrupt a little bit. But so it's one thing to be curious, but what you just said is you want to learn more about it, but you also wanted to do something about it. How does that come in at that age to say, actually, let me not just learn, but try to do something about it? Was that something driving that?
so honestly, it was pictures. It was majorly visual factors. So when I used to learn about all of these articles, I love animals, by the way. Like I love
Hmm.
them to the core of my heart. And that I realized since even an earlier age, when our family dog had recently passed away, and I was just inconsolable. At least that's what my parents tell me. I used to look at these pictures of, marine animals choking on plastic. And to my sixth, seventh grader mind, I was hurt deeply that our actions, like the actions caused by humans, the anthropogenic actions, had done so much harm to the planet. I used to get emotional about it a lot. And I was just, I then that's how the entire factor of, okay, I have to do something came in.
Wow.
And so you're so passionate about this. You have so many things that you're interested in about with now animals and with all these different aspects to the issues that our planet is facing. What inspired you and how did you actually start Plastic to Build?
So let me just continue on my journey. So from eighth grade, around eighth grade, it was around that time, I used to have a lot of free time on my hands because we were in lockdown. And, I was just like, since I am so passionate about this issue, and my mother was also encouraging me, when I do something other than just studies, do something that you're passionate about. And my father and my mother both had evoked this sense of, you need to be passionate about something, you need to have that fire. And I think I just found that fire. So it began initially with a small plastic bottle cap. I'll emphasize on that. So I had this, like, a collection of those plastic bottle caps lying around. And I asked Google, what can we do of this? So it was like top 10 hacks to reuse these plastic bottles. And I was just like, okay, I'm not really satisfied with any of them. Let me just try something. I'd also learned from my research about
Out
something
of
called
curiosity,
aerator.
sorry, what did Google suggest?
Google suggested, small arts and crafts to make out of
Hmm.
these. And I was, what am I supposed to do with that? Like, it'll go back to the landfill again. Like, once we're done with it, it'll go back. And all sorts of arts and crafts, like ones with googly eyes and all of that. I was just like, okay, no, I'm not doing this. So what I did was I took my mother's safety pin and I started our nearest stove and I poked holes inside that plastic bottle cap. Now,
Okay.
what is the relevance of those holes? It was basically to create this homemade aerator. So basically, which reduces the amount of water but maximizes water usage. So I started creating these aerators and I started putting them all on our taps, on the taps
Hmm.
of our entire house, like with tape and everything. So it stuck around for around, I would say, 1 week or so, and then it just gave out.
But still, that's 6 days longer than anything I've ever done in the house is stuck around. So well done.
Thank you so much. But then I realized another problem later on, like I think in ninth or 10th, which was microplastics. I didn't realize that at that time, but then I will not be creating aerators out of plastic bottles. I will source steel aerators instead. So then on, I also started creating eco bricks again. And they used to be everywhere in my room, like everywhere. In my drawer, you'd find eco bricks. On my desk, you'd find eco bricks. And my mom was just fed up. She was like, okay, what are you supposed to do with all of these?
Yeah.
So I was just like, I don't know. I don't know what I'm planning, but I am planning something. That
Hmm.
was just a way to stall her. But I hope. Then I started this Instagram account from my mother's phone called Eco Passionist. It was basically sharing sustainable tips online. Well, that was not the best. It was like I tried a lot through Instagram, but maybe it wasn't just my cup of tea.
Because of content you were seeing online or just. because Instagram wasn't like fun to use?
Both. Both, because honestly, we used to share these sustainable tips around, but I think there wasn't a lot of content to engage with. I think that was
Mm.
the issue. And then I created this WhatsApp group chat with three of my closest friends to go on a cleanup drive at Statue Circle, one of the most prized sort of monument. But there used to be a lot of pan masala wrappers and a lot of things around that, even though it used to be a regional symbol. So I was
Mm.
just like, okay, you know what? Let's do something about it. So we went there. We collected a few wrappers, and next day they were back. So I was like, okay, there needs to be a long term solution about this. It can't just keep happening again because we can't keep going and going and going. That's not how it works. So that's basically it.
And so then you can't keep going and going and going. And so you started Plastic to Build to solve the solution at its root cause, to make sure there would be more volunteers. How did that translate to Plastic to Build?
I think school and my parents have been a really integral part of my journey, especially to encourage me and to push me. So, like 99.99% of the credit belongs to them. No, but like I think they were more sustainable than me at that point of
Mm.
time when and I just didn't really realize it. Okay, but like spiraling back to your question, so again, eco bricks come into play, and I just decided to create this sort of like bench thing in my school. So there used to be this place where it's the canteen. So there used to be no place to actually sit at that canteen. So most people used to just stand. And then I also wanted to create that sort of ripple effect that since I've been learning about climate action and all of these things through my school, I wanted to educate people like me. And I wanted
Mm.
to let the youngsters know because my school planted that environmental seed in me a while ago. So I wanted to tell the younger generation that there is something like this and we need to start acting now. You're like the next hope because our generation is like the first hope right now. And then they're the next hope. So, so then on, I just started creating these tips and eco bricks. And, then I started involving the younger generation. I started going to the pre primary block a lot and educating them about this. Then the first ever project of Plastic to Brick actually came, which was an eco bench made of around 1,87,500 pieces of plastic. And also to bridge that gap between, the youth and also the information that's out there.
So you actually took those bricks and built an actual physical bench that people could sit on.
Yes, yes. It was made of around 125 eco bricks, if I'm not wrong. And yeah, all of them actually, there's a fun thing. All of them have actually written their names on those eco bricks. So whenever they want to see anything, they can see the eco bricks. It's like a legacy they leave behind at the school.
Nice.
Wow, you credited your parents and your school for 99%, but I think you really deserve a lot of the credit yourself. I mean, what you are doing is amazing.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And so the bricks, not only did they serve a functional purpose, but they're actually a visual symbol that you can actually do something with these plastics and people can come in and be like, oh, wow, it's a symbol that you can be doing more.
Yeah, yeah. Honestly, it was something like that. It was to give them that sense of you can do something about this issue too. It was like we have to start. Like there is no choice. We have to start now.
And where did you go from that first bench to where Plastic to Build is now?
So then from the second bench, I was just like, okay, this can be something. We can do something about this. So I sent out 4 team forms before actually, starting the entire organization. It was a student-led initiative. I would put it that way then. So I sent core team forms out in my school, and a lot of people volunteered. Actually, it was surprising and amazing to see. So then those core team forms, I picked out people from that to join the Plastic to Brick as formerly known. Then we started our, I think, Varanasi branch.
Mm.
So we used to have a lot of hostlers. We still have a lot of hostlers. So, I used to ask one of my hostler friends, would you be interested in this initiative in your region? And, one of them said yes. So from then on, we just started having these sustainability sessions in Jaipur and in Varanasi. And it was just plastic to brick at this time. And they created their own structure. Then it was the Dubai team. I had a few contacts there. So I was just like, okay, let me try let me try to reach out to him. Maybe he'll respond. And with a stroke of luck, he did. So, I credit a lot of the change that they've made in Plastic to Build to them. It was fully a youth led and a student led work. It was definitely for sure, their work and their passion. Then I created this artwork it was for a competition actually. It was a sort of artwork of a seahorse, but made out
Mhm.
of lace. So, those blue lace chips that you get, the
Yeah, yeah.
masala
The
ones?
magic masala, my
Yes.
favorite flavor.
Yeah. So I used to collect them around school. Like I used to go up to my friends and like physically tell them that once you're done with this wrapper, I need you to give this to me. Like I have to store this. So I started keeping them in my bag and bringing them home with me and washing them and just sort of keeping them in a tub because again, my parents didn't really like plastic lying around in our balcony. So I was just like, okay, I need to hide this from them. So I kept them in a drawer and then I started over them and then I made this sort of like mixed media painting made of acrylic and plastic. So then I submitted it into the competition. I didn't really get selected, but it was all right. It was the experience that counted.
I was going to say that's very like Aurora Robson of you in terms of like actually creating some art with like um, discarded materials. That's very impressive.
Yeah. Aurora Robson is actually one of the people I look up to in the plastic to art branch. So talking about that just planted this idea into my head. So I wanted to expand from just ecobricks and just sustainability sessions into actual, change. So I was just like, okay, let me think about, art or research or policy making or, livelihood skills. So these aspects then branched into 5 core starter projects under the non-profit organization Plastic to Build, Plastic to Arts, which is the art sector, the medium sector. But instead of just the googly eyes, we actually, auction these art pieces. We apply them for exhibitions. They're in school and they're creating sort of this impact, this visual sensory imagery
Yeah.
because art, pictures is what connected me to the
Mhm.
problem the most than plastic to livelihood because economics is such an integral part of environmental science. As I said earlier, everything is interrelated, everything is
Mm.
connected. If we start thinking about the environmental science aspect, we need to think about the economics aspect too. Like that is just a non-negotiable. So then
Yeah.
plastic to livelihood came in. So basically these individuals, they create mats, bags, and a lot of other things, and they sell them for profit. And then they use that profit to again do the entire process. So then there was plastic to brick, our original
Yeah.
idea. Then there's microplastic labs, which is basically talking about the tiniest bit of the problem. I've signed up for a lot of like newsletters and stuff. So I got this thing about how microplastics are now found in human blood.
Mm.
And I was just like, okay, what? For a second, I was just like, oh, you cannot be serious, right? And then I started researching about that, and I found out that microplastics increase your chances of getting all sorts of cancers by like 300%. So I was just shocked. I was just like, okay, this is an issue that needs to be addressed. And then plastic to policy, which is one of my favorite starter projects, which you talk about, policy making. You talk about how you can stop the plastic pollution at the source, like Arvind said, and citywide reform, statewide reform, and a lot of things like that. That's
And
how it basically.
and
Yeah.
that's super impressive, right? All those 5 buckets. As I can still, well, actually, if I go back to when I was 13, 14, 15, 16, environmental studies for me was learning about components of the Earth's atmosphere and freon and a little bit of this and that, but nowhere close to taking the action that you are. But I can still wrap my head around a few of these projects. When you start to think about policy, how are you as a 16-year-old just going out and trying to say, how can I actually influence some of these policy decisions bottoms up?
So honestly, I realized this like a couple of years ago that if you don't do anything related to policy, because since there's a lot of things, there's a lot of times where we blame the government and we move on because it's not our problem. But that's not true. We need individual action. And to create that individual action, we need the help of the government. Then policy is one of the most, I would say, core essential parts of this entire, I think, of the entire environmental issue umbrella.
Yeah.
Because honestly, if you don't have reform and policy, you can't really do anything about it. I think single-use plastic was banned in India in July 2022. So, yes, but that's not really implemented. So we need to either incentivize or penalize. And there's one more thing that my father mentioned. It's called compounded, returns. So he was just like, you need to start doing it again and again and again to actually create an impact. You say it once and then you move on. That is not how it's going to work. There are several people who said it once and moved on. And we cannot afford that anymore. We need to have a very compounded effect to, create tangible change. So I would say that.
That's very impressive. No, and I think you're right. Policy is where if you want to address something systemically, you need it at a policy level. And then it's about implementation. And then it's about driving that change all the way through. But to really make large scale, impactful change, I think policy plays a critical role. And it's interesting to hear you talk about the power of compounding because I think that's great advice in many things in life, even in jobs and sticking around at one place for a long time. It's the same thing with how wealth multiplies, but it's also when it comes to solving problems. I think that compounding effect of 1 then leading to 10, then leading to 100 and so on is genuinely very true. Kiara, go ahead. I think you had a question.
Yeah, no, you've talked about everything you're doing. And how do you do all of that and focus on school?
School did, subside for me a little bit when I was creating this entire thing. I still did manage to get a sort of tangible amount of A stars in my IGCSE boards. But, when I look at my friends and I just go, yeah, I could have done better. But then I was just like, did I really want to give up on the thing that I'm doing right now? So managing school and managing, I would say, one of the things that really affected me, one of the concepts that my father taught me was sleepless nights. No matter if you're working hard and you're working hard, sleep will not come that easily. If you want to do everything at once, obviously you can't do everything at once, sorry. You'll have to compromise on something. It's not that you can't compromise on anything. And I think that for me, that was sleep. I would say now my sleep schedule is fixed. Now it's okay because I've learned how to manage my time better. But yeah, I think time management also is one of the core things.
And you're young. You have the rest of your life to make up on sleep. Because I do recall when I was at a certain phase in life and I was trying to do 100 things, I was probably surviving on 4 to 5 hours of sleep. That I cannot do anymore. But you're right. Like when you're driven by something that is really important, you will push through and figure out a way to do it, which sounds like exactly what you're.
And you've also written your own book, Avyana. What made you write your own book?
I started writing the book like earlier than I started Plastic to Build, actually. So again, I was in lockdown and I used to, like any normal teenager would do, I used to watch a lot of videos, but my kind of videos weren't exactly the videos that would be very appealing to the teenager. It was on types of waste around the world and what businesses are actually doing. And then I was just like, okay, this is something new. And those videos, they used to not really be cared about very often, I would say. And my parents, secondly, were like, Avyana, you have to start doing something. do anything, just do something that you're passionate about, and we'll support you in any way. And I was just like, okay, I have a lot of free time on my hands, and my parents are also consistently saying this. They must be saying this for something good, right? So I started researching again. I think research has also been a very core integral part of everything I've been saying so far.
Mm.
So I started delving into research about how these businesses are doing something for sustainability in their own way, in their own region. And I just started cold emailing them to know a little bit more about them. So then randomly, I think my mother approached me about, Avyana, why don't you write a book? I was like, Mom, me write a book? I can't. What do you mean? Like, nobody's gonna believe a 14-year-old write a book. No offense to you, Kiara. If you want to write a book, please go ahead. I think one of the decisions that I regret saying is I can't write a book. Now I think my 16-year-old has proven my 14-year-old self wrong, that I can actually write a book.
Mm.
So, I was just like, okay, so I started cold emailing them, I started interviewing them, and I started gathering data from a lot of sources about them. And when I was looking at all of these videos, I was just like, there's a lot of negative stigma around the climate narrative. It was, either doom, death, destruction, deforestation. I don't know more words with D, but but those were
Disbelief, because some
one of
people
the,
don't think climate change is real.
yeah. I mean, it's surprising. Like, what do you mean climate change is not real? Like, 2024 was the hottest year ever recorded, and you're saying climate change is not real. Okay, how does that work? And one of the anecdotes I would say was, for me, there was this class I used to go to, and there were these middle schoolers who were really excited about, Diwali, and they were really excited about bursting crackers. I was just like, okay, so my mind immediately went to the pollution. I was just like, okay, but like, we are contributing to the air pollution. What about, everything else? And they were like, oh, you're the government samalegi. That's like the government's job. I was just kind of stunned. I did not know what to say. So I wanted to bring that core concept that we have to start now, and we have to start in any way we can in my book.
But it's clear, right? I mean, plastic in the food chain is either entering into the system, and then that goes through the entire food cycle. And then so prey that then feeds on a smaller fish that has eaten the microplastic gets into their system, and that creates its own vicious cycle.
So I wanted to show how everyone is doing everything at their own pace, and it's time that we start doing stuff on our own now. So yeah, that's
really impressive. It reminds me of I recently read David Attenborough's Ocean, and in that he talks about this area in Mexico where the reef was really badly damaged, and that had large scale effects eventually on just overall marine life, and then predators, and then you weren't getting sharks, you weren't getting whale sharks that used to come all the time, despite them being some nice currency in the past nutrient rich waters. And they managed to stop overfishing. They actually managed to convince the entire community to not fish for a period of time, which is actually a big deal. It goes back to your point on economics, because this is how everyone sustained a livelihood. And they were now living off government subsidies for a while. And then in 10 years, it started to get better. And then a few years after that, they still stopped overfishing from commercial vehicles, but the local fishermen could go out. But the marine life had exponentially increased, almost back to pre-overfishing levels. And so now the local fishermen were able to fish, but they also now had this great reef that was protected, and they brought in tourism that brought in more dollars. And it all came from this entire community coming together. And this one person who actually said, I think there's a return to the ocean and we can fix this. And that one person's action, and then collecting that all the way through, and then impacting policy while tying it to economics. So a lot of what you said was a standout example to me. And I'm blown away that I'm reading about that in a book by David Attenborough, but I'm seeing a 16-year-old in Jaipur essentially trying to do that in her own way with plastic and your startup. So that's pretty incredible.
Thank you so much.
I just want to say I picked up your book in Jaipur and I've got it signed by you. That's one of the top things that's going to be on my reading list now. So I can't wait to pick the book up.
You should make a genuine effort to read it. because the book is called Effort, you know.
Yeah,
Attempted
it's
wordplay.
again,
Actually called
it's
Prayas, but anyway. Right?
it's actually also a sort of, how do you call it, an acknowledgement or a tip off to my father's concept of compounding.
Mm,
So so these people made small efforts, which then created change in their communities. So it's time we start making the efforts. I wanted to give this sort of tribute to my heritage, also Indian heritage, by the name of Prayas, to sort of highlight the fact that India needs it the most.
I don't want to ask you the age old question, which all teenagers between your age and my age usually receive, which is what do you want to be when you're older? Because you're already doing so much now. But how do you see this work evolving? Do you think it will always be at the center of what you do in your life? How are you thinking about colleges, etc.?
So there was this person I met, very esteemed person on the panels with me. His name's Mr. Prem Shankar Jha. He's 87 years old and he has been an inspiration to me since a really, really long time. So it was just reading his book, then actually meeting him, which made me sort of try to figure out my path in life. Again, I would give this sort of tribute to my parents, which encouraged me to think about the larger goal in life, not just college, but what's your main goal.
mm,
And I've been giving it a lot of thought, and honestly, I think I would building sustainable systems in India without compromising on costs or practicality. I think that is I think that is one of the mottos that everything in my life will revolve around. So my college and everything, related to my life, I think would revolve around that one line. So when I think about college, I would say yes, college. I need to go to college, of course, for a higher education, and since my field also requires that, because honestly, I plan to come back to India and I plan to implement what I've learned from college back in India. If you don't have a purpose in life, what are you doing then? So this might be a little bit offending to some people, but I think, yeah, no, obviously, purpose is not your entire life, but I think it's the core aspect of your life. So, in my future, I plan to, pursue these colleges, and I think Ivy League specifically, because, coming back to India, they're not Indians specifically are not very open to the concept of sustainability yet. I would say, I think I've seen this in my classmates as well. Back when I was in middle school, they weren't really open to the concept of me collecting their trash. And why would they be? I plan to help them adopt this, sort of this entire concept of sustainability. So that I would say my future path in life.
that is very interesting. And I think you said a bunch of things in terms of college. I was just reading this article the other day where, at least in the US, there was a survey done, and over 50% of kids at a certain age were not really sure about college, just with employability and AI and what that's going to do. So there's one theme there which we should talk about after the pod. But you talked about purpose, and I think that's a phenomenal discussion. Which, to be honest, I'm having it with a bunch of folks my age now, where people have worked for a long time and are wondering, like, what is that purpose? And there's a lot of interesting reading. When you're older, you should probably read Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. But there's a lot of books about meaning, purpose, happiness, how these things are connected. Jennifer Acker has done a lot of research on meaning versus happiness, and meaning ties much more into that purpose. So I agree with you. I think having a purpose is a great way of giving direction and giving focus to one's life. But I don't think everyone's lucky enough to figure out their purpose early on. And for you to have that at a young age, I think is both a bit of luck, but also a testament to you actually really asking yourself the hard questions, being curious, and actually trying things out.
It's really inspiring to see, what the both of you are doing as well. Like, honestly, I had read a little bit of the brief that Kiara had sent me, and it's very, very nice to see. And I'm honored, and I'm genuinely really honored to be here.
Well, thank you.
I think I'm very, very inspired by not just everything you do, but the way you're looking at your life and looking about the world. This is not the end of our conversation. This is the end of the segment, however, and we will be back for the 14 going on 41 What If segment. We are back and here for the 14 going on 41 What If segment. So, Avyana, to explain the segment to you, it is a sort of hypothetical segment where we ask questions about what if this and this happened, and you have to sort of see. And so usually when we play this game, it's looking back at the past and trying to reimagine what if you'd gone down another fork in the road, what would your life be looking like? But obviously you have a lot of your life left to live, and so there aren't many fork in the roads we can go back to, so it may look a little different for this episode. And Arvind can start us off with the first question.
Sure. So I think you talked a bit about policy. You talked about how important that is. What if, you've got the world's biggest leaders assembled before you tomorrow and they're like, Avyana, give us one thing to implement and we'll implement it, no questions asked. What solution would you push for?
Wow, I need to think about this one. There's just so many things. So I would say ban and enforce those bans on all 7 types of plastic. And right now, if we're looking at it, I know this is a hypothetical segment, but if we're looking at it, that is not possible right now because there aren't a lot of alternatives for all 7 types of plastic. But we're seeing new inventions every single day on the different types of plastics, the different, there was this concept called bioplastics. They're getting made from seaweed, from cornstarch, from, vegetable oils, and from all sorts of things which are industrially compostable and, biodegradable. So I would say, I think that is one of the policies I would have. And to make sure that it's implemented, we need to do 3 things. First, come up with alternatives. You need to give people alternatives to choose to use something else apart from that, or penalize them to show the fact that this policy is actually implementable and to make it strict. But obviously, I'm just 16, so I may or may not be making the best economic decision right now, but if it was hypothetical, that was what I would do.
That's a great answer. And I think and the elements you added to it, which is around, incentivize, penalize, make sure there are alternatives, is great. I think a few world leaders may come back and ask you, like I might have asked, there are 7 types of plastic. Oh, wait, I didn't know that. We can take that offline so I can get better educated. But that's a very thoughtful answer.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You talked so much about the support of, your family and your parents. And like Arvind said, they've done an amazing job in your school as well. But what if, people around you weren't as supportive and they said, play it safe, stick to school projects, focus on school, leave everything you can do that when you're older? How would that, change your mindset or your approach to life?
So honestly, I would rebel. I'd fight with them all the time. If I want to do something, why would you stop me? Why would you say that? I know school is not the entire end point. If I had no support, I would definitely for sure be a rebellious kid, very, very rebellious kid. And
that's the most teenage thing you've said on the podcast so far, Avyana. But most people are rebelling for far different things that may be less impactful. Okay, let me go into my next what if. What if you could swap lives with one activist / inspiring figure? I'll keep it a bit broad based, but if you could swap lives with someone for a month, who would it be and why? And I'm thinking about someone in the activist space, but any other inspiration would also work.
I think if for a month, I would swap lives with India's environmental minister, Mr. Bhupendra Yadav. I am not a person to criticize or like comment on any of the actions he takes, but I think if it was, because I've been talking about policy since a really long time, and I think implementing those policies would be best if I could do that at a government level. So I would choose India's environmental minister, Mr. Bhupendra Yadav.
Again, gives a great insight into your thinking, because a lot of people be like, oh, it'd be great to have someone's life for a month just to experience it. But you're like, how can I have the most impact in 1 month in a position that can make a difference?
Maybe one day you want to become India's, and you will become India's environmental minister. Still an option. Okay, so my what if is, what if you could redesign a city or community from scratch? I mean, knowing everything you do, what would it look like?
So again, there are several aspects to it. It depends first on the topography, on the geography, and the climate and the temperature of those regions. So if I had to redesign a city, I would say I would definitely, and if I had an unlimited budget, are you giving me an unlimited budget as well?
Hypothetical, sure.
Okay. So I would definitely, have rainwater harvesting plants in a lot of homes. I would have solar panels. Yes, they do have a few disadvantages, but, try to be as maximize the sustainability as much as possible. I would discourage, and I think I would heavily fine, the use of unsustainable materials like, say, for example, non-stick pans, because it's not just detrimental for the environment, it's also detrimental for human health, and more so than variants from stuff like plastic and polyester, because, these things are leaching into our skin as we speak if we don't stop wearing all of these. Now, I know that there are some things that we cannot give up. There are a few things in my household that I just cannot give up or cannot find a sustainable alternative to. But most of the things, I think I would say 80% at least, can be sustainable. Then I would make sure that, there is a limit to, since the city, if it would be around agriculture, I would make sure that there is some sort of, water limit for a person, to, sort of take inspiration from Israel's water pricing. Then I would deal with the waste problem. And yes, that might seem like, say, for example, restricting the sort of autonomy of a person, but just to ensure that that the city itself has easily accessible water, or is, not water stressed and is not water scarce, I would implement all of these. But I hope that answers your question.
That's a great answer.
I love how thought out your answers are. Like, you don't talk a big game of this was what I'll implement. You have thought things through of like how I will implement this, how it needs to be maintainable, and to a very minuscule level and to a big level as well. So that's amazing. Yeah.
Thank you.
This is my final what if. What if you could chart out the next 10 years of your life exactly the way you want, whether that's college and choice of programs, or job and choice of job, or startup and choice of start, whatever it is. If you could chart out the next 10 years and you could like write that down.
So the next 10 years, I have the next like 1 month decided. I haven't. Okay, so the end goal of those next 10 years would be sort of creating this, I would say, a consulting firm to the Indian government, not being a part of the Indian government, but starting a consulting firm, hopefully a multinational consulting firm, to sort of create those systems that I was talking about earlier, and create such foolproof and such bulletproof plans of those systems that that can be implemented in all over the world. So I'm going to take one more example of my inspiration, Mr. Prem Chandra. He has actually delved into the energy sector, specifically to the biomass sector. I think Kiara knows what I'm talking about. So he has spent, a lot of his life from an economist to a journalist to, finally a climate energy, person. So he has, proposed proposals to the Maharashtrian government, and he has come up with this foolproof plan backed with years and years of research with Mr. McElroy, which is the Gilbert Butler Professor of Environmental Studies at Harvard University. He sort of created this map of how India can switch to biomass without compromising on the economic aspect. He has actually started his own plant in Punjab regarding biomass. So he has bought, I think, around 5,000 acres of paddy straw or, rice straw. And he is planning to, generate biomass energy out of it.
So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see the path you take. I feel like with the amount you've already done at such a young age, Avyana, you could probably kick things off sooner. But you know your journey. You have great clarity of thought at such a young age. And we will test that a little further in our next game, because our next game is called the happiness rating game. And it's interesting to get this perspective again from a 16-year-old, because we're just going to list out a bunch of parameters and we're going to ask you to rate how important you think they are to your happiness. You just have to rate from 1 to 5, 1 being not that important to your happiness, 5 being extremely important to your happiness. And we'll just go through it very quickly. And again, getting your perspective at such a young age, I think will be very interesting. So the first one is, how important to your happiness is fame?
2.
Okay.
Okay. The next one is wealth.
I would say again a 2, but then I also do need to earn money. So 2.5 to 3, I think I would say that, because I need to leave. I think I need to leave a bit to my future generations if I do have a few. So yeah.
Okay. How about health?
Oh, for sure 5. Actually, no, 4. 4. Yeah, 4.
Why did you downgrade health a little bit? Because something else might take precedence? Or
Yeah.
okay.
I think that, and also because sometimes I think my parents will come at me for saying this. Sometimes I think you do need to sacrifice a little bit on your health to achieve your goal.
It's an interesting take.
Okay. The next one is friendships and connections.
4.5 to, I think, 5. I think I value my friends a lot.
Okay. Very cool. How about, I think I know the answer for this, but how about impact?
5. 5 to, I think if we can exceed that scale, 5 to 10.
Yeah.
How about legacy?
Legacy, I'm not really sure in terms of leaving a better leaving a better future to them, or like legacy in terms of wealth and fame and all of that.
How you want to interpret it, but the way I think of fame is in the present, whereas legacy, I think, is just what you leave behind, whether it's how you're remembered or an idea of yours that's remembered for future generations.
So I think it doesn't matter what I leave behind. I just hope the impact that I leave behind stays. So around 4 again, I would say.
Okay. And the last one we had was fun.
Fun as a teenager, max to max. But obviously, it's not be that much. So I would say around 3.
Okay. Very cool.
Okay.
Enjoyed hearing those answers. And I think I'm not surprised to hear impact like off the charts of everything else. It seems that you talked about purpose, you talked about wanting to leave an impact behind more than a legacy behind. And so I think it's amazing. I've said it before, but it's amazing that you have this clarity of thought at such a young age and that you're actually following through on things you say. You're not just, talking the talk. You're not just doing things for some college application. These are things you genuinely believe in or are acting towards, which is very remarkable. So congrats to you and just wishing you all the best.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It was, again, I would say, an honor to be here. I think this is my first ever podcast, so I'll always remember this. And I hope there are future ones to come. But yeah, thank you so much.
I'm sure with everything you'll be doing, you'll be invited to a lot more places to speak like JLF and a lot more podcasts to be a guest on. And I really, really enjoyed talking to you, hearing everything you had to say. So thank you so much for being here, Avyana.
Thank you so much for having me. It was an honor to be here. And you guys have amazing segments and ask amazing questions. I think, honestly, when I was talking to the both of you, I think I had more clarity in my own head. So thank you for that as well.
Oh, excellent.
Thank you.
Best compliment we've received from a guest. Most people can't wait to get off. And so thank you again, Avyana. And we'll be back after this to talk about our takeaways from today's episode. Welcome back. And we're here to wrap up. But before we get to our takeaways, Kiara, it's time for your favorite segment.
The good old days. But I actually enjoyed it last week, so I have hopes for this one.
In the good old days.
The fact that you had to caveat you enjoyed it last week makes me wonder if you don't enjoy it every week. But let's go with this one. Right? We're talking about school, we're talking about environmental science, we talked about geography, we talked about the climate, etc., etc. I was curious, Kiara, have you heard of an atlas?
I have, and I do know what an atlas is in terms of like the book. But what I most associate with the word is the Greek Titan Atlas, holding up the sky. And then, of course, Percy Jackson.
Very cool. I mean, so you know both meanings, and we went really far back in the good old days. We're talking about Greek mythology. Have you ever used an atlas, Kiara?
I have actually once, because my dad challenged me to find the name of some water body, and he said I had to do it without touching any device or any screen or ask for any help. So I didn't know what to do, and I could not for the life of me remember the name of that water body. And I remembered we had an atlas, and so I checked that and I found out the name.
Oh, very nice. Was it the Pacific Ocean? That's pretty big. It's hard to miss. But anyway, I'm sure it may have been more obscure than that.
It was the Strait of Hormuz.
Oh, there you go. It's in the news these days with everything going on in the Middle East. So, with that in mind, I used to use the atlas in school, but I thought about how we used to study geography in school, right? It would be go to an atlas. If you needed to look up Copenhagen, capital of Denmark, where's the Europe section? Oh, where are the Nordics? Oh, that's Denmark. Oh, that's Copenhagen, right? That's how we learned. Whereas today, you can actually not just look up on the internet where it is, but what it looks like, get actual moving videos and know what a place is like from, the comfort of your room. And the way we also learned was, okay, you learned borders, you learned capital of countries, that was geography. It was a bit of rote learning. Whereas I look at how my nieces are learning today, and I thought about it as Avyana was talking, but geography is being taught not as this place is here and that place is there, but more as a system space, right? Which is, these are oceans, this is land, these are mountains, these are how all these systems interact with each other. That creates this effect. And this is how you need to think about things in the future. So I thought that systems thinking to geography is really interesting. And the other thing I thought about is just how certain things which I thought were permanent in my atlas. So we used to think glaciers were permanent land masses, kind of like the mountains. So the Himalayas are here, the glaciers are here, but we now know that glaciers are not permanent. Some of them are starting to disappear. Some of them are decreasing in size. And so just the view of something that was viewed as permanent, but is not so much now, just made me think about how times change and evolve.
And you also mentioned about the way you used to learn, which brings me to my takeaway for this episode. So over the last few episodes with our guests, we've always sort of debated whether everything with AI and with all the information that we get on the internet, whether that's a good thing, whether it's creating too many opportunities, so many opportunities that are good for us, bad for us. So we've had this debate. But what I've really gotten away from Avyana is the way she utilizes all of this. So whether it's in the lockdown and she was talking about how she was watching videos. I mean, all of us, we all watch videos. I watch videos. Most of us, including me, end up watching videos that are absolute nonsense and just entertainment, or we're scrolling on Instagram or TikTok. But Avyana is instead watching videos that are increasing her knowledge, and she's researching constantly and doing so many things, utilizing everything all of us have at our fingertips to sort of drive her purpose. And she's so driven like that. So she's going to push me to become more productive like that and use all the things that I have access to.
That is very cool. And I think it's something I think we can all take away in terms of just making use of the resources available to us. My takeaway was actually when Avyana was talking about purpose. It's something I've been talking to a lot of people about for the last few years, but I wondered if it's a phenomenon that happens in your 30s, 40s. But it's interesting to see a 16-year-old talk about her purpose. And it just made me realize that it's never too early to start thinking about something like this. And the fact that she's been thoughtful about it has given her a perspective of what she should prioritize, what she should look at. And look, these things can evolve, right? Your main quest, as we've talked about in previous episodes, can evolve. But knowing what it is at this moment and working towards it, I think is incredibly powerful and brings together a lot of your actions. And so never too early to start thinking about your purpose.
Unfortunately, we've come to the end of the episode. So that is all for today. We'll see you next week. Until then, drive safe on the road less traveled.
Peace out, party people.